Good morning, everyone. Happy Sabbath. It's getting hot, right? Do you like it? I was in Vegas, like somebody said last week. But I wouldn't recommend anyone to go to Vegas to get a momentum because I will lose momentum because it's so hot. I was melting last weekend. 4th of July weekend, I was there because I want to make it like clear to everyone that I didn't go there to do this. I went there to show watch out there to the missionaries from Korea. Good excuse, right? Missionaries. And they before they went back to Korea, I wanted to show them like what's out there outside of California. So we drove to Utah, Arches National Park, and we went to Grand Canyon. And then on the way back, we stopped at Vegas. So that's the whole context, anyway. So I want to welcome everyone who's joining us this morning, also joining us online. So as we worship together, I pray that the Lord be with us so that we can feel His presence. Today's message, what is the title as you can see on the screen? What is it? Victory in the face of adversity, the underdog's journey. Well, I love play basketball. How many of you like to play basketball? Please raise your hand. Okay, you like to play basketball. You know, when I was younger and when I was in college, only by listening, like hearing this ball bouncing, my heart would start racing. I got so excited. I could not wait to go and play basketball. So until today, I love to play basketball and I love to watch basketball games. And there's only one. There are 4 major sports in America, and I only invest my time in one: NBA basketball. Even a football game, I only watch one game a year: Super Bowl. That's it. But basketball is something like that I would follow and see what's going on, throughout the season. And last year, the NBA season was very interesting because it wasn't like 1997 Chicago Bulls, like 72 wins or anything. There's no like a team dominating the entire league. They were just so close. Like every week, you can see their standings changing. And when the season was over, the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat, they were sitting on the 8th seed. So he was at the very bottom to make it to the playoffs. But then what happened? They became the Eastern Conference champion. The 8th seed, nobody thought that they're going to make it no more than first round or second round. They made it all the way to the NBA Finals. So I was curious, how many times in the past 77 years of NBA history have 8th seed reached the NBA Finals? Do you know how many times that happened? Prior to Miami Heat, only one time. 1998 and 1999, New York Knicks. Now you, Jason, yeah. Yeah, that's the only team that made it to the NBA Finals when they were an underdog. And now we're at 2023 NBA Finals. How many of you remember which are those 2 teams who play against each other? Only a few, right? Why? Because those 2 teams, what was that? Nuggets and Heat. The Denver Nuggets, how many of you guys are really like a fan of Denver Nuggets? I mean, no offense to anyone coming from Colorado, but like, who would really follow Denver Nuggets? And the thing is, the whole point that I'm trying to make is that they are an underdog. So Denver Nuggets, they won the championship. And that was a great milestone because it was their first title in 47 years of their franchise history. Isn't that a great milestone, yes or no? Yes, they waited almost half a century to get this championship, But then after the NBA Finals was over, no one talks about Denver Nuggets anymore. Do you hear anything about Denver Nuggets? No, people keep talking about Boston Celtics, LA Lakers, Golden State Warriors. Why? Because Denver Nuggets, it's a small market. They will always be an underdog. And being an underdog is not something that a lot of people want to be in. And this whole NBA finals and everything makes me think, like, what are we as Christians in this world? Are we an underdog, or are we in the mainstream? Throughout the entire history, the human history, those who believed in God have always been a minority. Would you agree? Well, we're looking at the book of Exodus. The Israelites, are they one of those mainstream, like, superpower nations at that time? No, they were just minorities. So when you look at this picture, Moses and Aaron standing in front of Pharaoh, this is like one of these, like, Lakers versus who cares team. This picture, we all talk about Moses, all the miracles and everything. But they were an underdog that nobody really cared. So we're going to cover the 14th chapter of book of Exodus. And today, this chapter is telling us an incredible story how God helped an underdog to win over one of the strongest adversaries at the time. So chapter 14, it says, "Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying," quick review, what happened in chapter 13? Anybody remember? It was last week. God prepared them right before they embarked their journey. God prepared them to consecrate themselves, right? And then you eat the unleavened bread. Why? Because the leaven symbolizes sin and evil, right? And then they followed what? The pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud. That's what happened in chapter 13. So 14, now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel that they turn and camp before Pi-Hiroth, between Migdol and the sea, opposite Baal-zephon. You shall camp before it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are bewildered by the land. The wilderness has closed them in." And by the way, you may wonder, what is Pi-Hiroth? What is Migdol, right? So let me give you a quick review here. So this is their route. So when they left Egypt, they were going down, 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 and this is where it's called Migdol, right? And then here, Pi-Hiroth. So they're here, and then the Migdol means here, the watchtowers. So Pi-Hiroth, it means mouth of canal facing Baal-zephon. So Baal-zephon is here. So now you have three-way mouth of water: Suez, here, Aqaba, and Arabia. So that's where the Bible is talking about. So from here, opposite side to Baal-zephon. So here, this is what they will see. This is the view of Baal-zephon from the camp, the Red Sea camp. So they were looking at over there. So this is where the Israelites were standing. Are you following? Okay. So verse 4. "Then I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord." And they did so. Now it was told the king of Egypt that the people had fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, "Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" The question is, God already chose to let them go, right? Then why he didn't just let them go without any troubles, right? Without any hassles, but it seems like he's purposely what? Hardened Pharaoh's heart so Pharaoh would pursue them. Last time when the 10 plagues, when we were going over 10 plagues, God says, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. What was the reason that we studied that God hardened Pharaoh's heart? Anybody remember? Because God was preparing Moses at the time for the future hardships and persecutions. Remember, Moses, his faith was still weak. When God called him, how many times he gave God an excuse to send somebody else? I'm not an eloquent speaker. And God says, I will be with you. And he says, no, send somebody else. And God says, I will be with you. And then Moses says, no, send somebody else. And we talked about it. When God says, I will be with you 3 times that you don't get it, it's time for the pow. Right? So God said, no, you're going. God's angered, God's anger arose. But see, Moses was, even though he was standing in front of Pharaoh and everything, but his faith was still weak. So over the course of time, first place, this is like crazy, like supernatural phenomenon. But then they saw God's hand moving. So their faith grew a little bit. But then the second one came. And then now they see again the God's hand is moving. So their faith grew little by little, right? And then now this time, God took them out of Egypt, but took them detour. And last week we studied that the reason why God did that is because Israelites were not ready to face all the wars going through other people's land. So again, now God is preparing the faith of Israelites by letting them go through those hard situations. So when God is like throwing something on your way that you feel like, is God really mad at me? Or why is like throwing all this in my life on my way? It's because God wants me to grow. Little by little, because there are big things coming. But when you face that, now I want you to have the faith in me. That's what is happening here. And now, the Pharaoh, they were like, why have we done this? Because they thought, remember when Pharaoh went, when Moses went to Pharaoh, his initial request was what? Let us go to the wilderness for 3 days, right? Remember? Yeah, let us go to the wilderness for 3 days and let us worship God. Pharaoh must have thought that was the case. But he saw that they kept going. So Pharaoh had apparently intended his permission to be limited to a 3-day journey into eastern Egyptian desert. When it became apparent that the Israelites were pressing rapidly through the desert toward the Red Sea, Pharaoh set out in pursuit. So now we are at verse 6. So he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. Also, he took 600 choice chariots. How many? 600 choice chariots, the best ones. And all the chariots of Egypt, with captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with boldness. At this time, the chariot, it would be equivalent to a tanks in today's context. Because back then the words were what? Infantry versus infantry, but if you have a chariot, now you have a tank. And now you have like 600 chariots coming toward the Israelites. And they were pursuing Israelites. So verse 9, so the Egyptians pursue them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, camping by the sea beside Pi-Hahiroth, before Baal-zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, they now see all the tanks coming toward them. The Egyptians marched after them, so they were very afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Yes, this is a very, very scary moment. They're facing this brutal army. And this army is very confident and angry. So now they're crying out to the Lord. In verse 11, then they said to Moses, but this is how they said. They didn't just cry out. Because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. Apparently, even after the 10 plagues, even after witnessing God's delivering hands, even while they are witnessing the pillar of clouds and pillar of fire, when there was an imminent danger, their faith is what? We'd rather go back to the Egypt. We better be slaves. And this is the reason why God hardened Pharaoh's heart to show the Israelites that, hey, I know you have been an underdog, but you have a great coach here. You know, we hear this a lot, like when we are in a very tough situations, what do people say? Believe in yourself. You can do it. Believe in yourself. But I believe that in a spiritual realm, this is the message. If I would say it strongly, I would say that this is the message that Satan really wants you to have in your mind. Believe in yourself. You know, when I was driving by a highway, I see those signs every now and then. The Mega Millions, it says 1.28 billions, and Powerball, the hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, how many of you, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you may think, I should try one? Who knows, you know? If I don't buy anything, my chances are zero. But if I buy one, at least I have like 1 in a million, you know? Yes, I was like thinking, wow, what if I have like that much money? I could start my own ministry. I'm going to build this media center. I'm going to start my music ministry. I'm going to sponsor all the missionaries. I'm going to donate money to the charity. I mean, right that? You hear that? When I look at myself, I got nothing. So I need something to believe. And in this case, maybe there's hundreds of millions of dollars, some good resources from this place, good network that I may have. That may help me to God's job, God's work. You know, the reason why the Israelites were struggling to believe is because they kept looking at themselves. Are you following? God has shown miracles after miracles, but they were still looking at themselves. Are you following? That's why when there's imminent danger presented to them, they're like shaking. Well, in our life, you and I, will always face overwhelming situations that would definitely make us feel scared and afraid. But God's true believers don't get scared. Why? Because even though in the midst of this overwhelming, scary situation, we practice our faith to listen to the promise. Like Moses is telling to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Now you see that Moses' faith has grown. In a few chapters ago, Moses kept saying, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. But going through the 10 plagues, at least the Moses' faith has grown. But now he's encouraging the Israelites. Your faith also needs to grow as well. You know, the story of Underdog, the story of David and Goliath. When David came forth, David was a definitely underdog, yes? So when David came out, nobody thought David would defeat the Goliath. Even the Goliath was like, are you kidding me? You come to me with this slingshot? But when David, as an underdog, went against this giant, he did not look at himself. He did not look at his height. He did not look at his strength. But this is what he says. You come to me with a sword, with spear, and with the javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day, who? The Lord will deliver you into my hand. David is not saying, you know what, how much times I practiced my slingshot? I'm going to be the one like, bullseye. No, the Lord will deliver you into my hands. Our life, book of Exodus, is reflecting our life from here to our promised land, the heavenly kingdom that God has built for us. This is our Exodus. And when someone says, believe in yourself, I would say, believe in God. That's what God is trying to tell us. No, you don't believe yourself. Believe in God. So verse 15, and the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward, but lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea, and I indeed will harden the heart of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, his chariot, and his horsemen. So this is what God is telling Moses to do. By the way, 2 weeks ago, on my ordination, Greg gave me this. And I thought, would I ever use this? And this is a perfect scripture that I can use this today. That God told Moses what? Stretch out your hand with your rod, right? Think about this. Today, if I go to the Red Sea and stretch my hand and do this, do you think the Red Sea would split? Yes or no? It wouldn't. It wouldn't. God is asking Moses something very absurd. Yes or no? Yes, something very absurd God is asking Moses to do. And if I get this instruction, now I start to bring my own understanding and saying, based on my education, based on my science research, this is just ridiculous. How is the ocean split, right? What God is asking appears to be utterly absurd. But Moses did not believe in himself. He believed in God. And that's what God is asking us today. Don't use your knowledge. Don't come to me and say, this is my science research. I have like 5 PhDs. I have all the degrees. No, God says, no. My ways, not your ways. My ways are higher than your ways. And the things that I do is beyond your understanding. And God continues to say, verse 18, then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariot, and his horsemen. And the angel of God who went before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud went from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud and darkness to the one, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one did not come near the other all that night. So in this situation, Egyptians are pursuing them. And think about it. How many Israelites were traveling, by the way? A lot. Whole bunch. It's like 600,000. There's numbers there. When this mass crowd is moving, do you think they would go fast? It's a very slow journey. But then now Israelites are coming with what? Chariots. So they can just catch up to them just like that. So now they're there. They're about to get to the tail of the Israelites. And then God prepared this pillar of cloud between the Israelites and between who? The Egyptians. And protecting them. I'm like, God, why do you make this so complicated? If you're going to protect them like this, why do you let them come from the first place anyway? Right? And this is what the Bible says, Isaiah 43, verse 2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you. Let's read this again. When you pass through the waters. First of all, I came to California in 2017, and about 7 years, I've never got into the beaches here. I live in a condominium with all the pools and jacuzzi. I've been living there for 4 or 5 years. I've never got into the water. Some people don't like to get into the water. It's cold. But the thing is, no, you're going to pass through the water. I don't know whether it's going to be really like freezing cold water or hot water. But God says you are going to go through the water. But when you do that, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. Meaning, it may come to your knees, your waist, your chest. It's getting deeper and deeper. Maybe it goes all the way here. You're about like, oh, I can't really breathe. But it will not overflow you. Are you following? When you walk through the fire, God doesn't say, oh, you will never get close to fire because it's hot. No. When you walk through the fire, then you're going to feel the heat. You're going to get some burns. But it's not going to burn you out. It's going to burn you up. Nor shall the flame scorch you. This is what God is promising to us. Then why do we even have to go through the waters? Because of the sin, because of Satan. All the trials and turmoils and hardships that he's creating to discourage us, that we have to go through that. And God's promise is what? I will be with you. Verse 21, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. So the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on the dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand, on their left. And I thought when Moses did this, I thought the Red Sea would split instantly. Does it what you see here? It says here, when Moses stretched out his hand, the strong wind came all that night. It was a very slow process. And this is when the Israelites, they are really like practicing their faith. Because now they see on their tail, the Egyptian army is right there. You would say, God, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And how many times we ask God, God, hurry up. You got to hurry up. And God says, no, I got you here. I put my pillar of cloud right there. And I do it in my own timing. So now they went into this dry ground after God split the Red Sea. And verse 23. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea. All Pharaoh's horses, his chariot, and his horsemen. Now it came to pass in the morning watch that the Lord looked down upon the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of the fire and cloud, and he troubled the army of the Egyptians. And he took off their chariot wheels so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. Do you see now even the Egyptians, they realize that the Lord is fighting for them. In our battle that we are going through in this journey, it is not you and I fighting this battle. It is God fighting the battle for you and I. The question is, are we allowing God to fight the battle for us? In order for us to do that, we have to go behind God, not ahead of God. Last week we talked about some of us going ahead of God, setting all the plans and ask God, okay, God, this is my plan, follow me. No, we go after God. Verse 26, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, on their chariots and on their horsemen. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and when the morning appeared, the sea returned to its full depth, while the Egyptians were fleeing into it. So the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Then the waters returned and covered the chariot, the horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. Not so much as one of them remained. Verse 29, but the children of Israel had walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were on the wall to them on their right hand and on their left. So the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Thus Israel saw the great work which the Lord had done in Egypt. So the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. I want to highlight the two words, feared and believed. Feared, meaning now they realize who did this. It's not them. It's not their mighty army fought against Egyptian armies. It is God. There's a respect. Do I show my respect to God, the Creator God, when I live my daily life? And number two, now they believed the Lord. When God is, taking his time, why do you think God is taking his time? Why he doesn't just give you things instantly? Because if God would give me things instantly, why do I need a faith? I don't need any faith. It will be given instantly. I just got a dog, 8 weeks old. And I Google, when can I give chicken to, how old they should be? And they said, well, from 8 weeks. So I gave them some chicken. And now, when I'm in the kitchen, the dog comes and waits. I don't give chicken to him right away, but he has a faith. He waits there. He just wagging his tail, waiting and waiting and waiting until I give him the chicken. God takes his time so that we can practice our faith. And this chapter, I would say that this is one of the greatest comeback stories in the Bible. The question is, so when Jesus was here, was Jesus an underdog? Yes or no? Was he an underdog? God has all the power and resources to make Jesus rich. He has all the power to make his life comfortable. He could have positioned him as one of the most influential individuals in the mainstream. Yes or no? But when he came, he didn't even have a room. He was born in a manger. There's no hotel that was ready for him. And right after he was born, his life was in danger. And because of that, the King Herod tried to kill all the babies in Jerusalem. His family had to move to a foreign land to escape from the persecution. And when Jesus came and when he started his ministry, people called him what? Jesus of Nazareth. Do you know that Jesus is from the hood? He's from the hood. And we're like, Lord, I want to move to really good neighborhood, good school district. Lord, help me to get all these things. But Jesus himself is the hood. How do I know? John 1:45 and 46. When Philip talked to Nathanael, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael said to him, can anything good come out of Nazareth? His whole life, Jesus was an underdog. He was never in the mainstream. But even Jesus himself, he had to believe in God, not in himself. Also, Jesus needed to practice his faith to be a perfect example for us who are experiencing the life of an underdog, you and I. And because of that, he had enough faith to carry the cross for you and I. Remember the prayers of Jesus in Gethsemane? He was like, if it's possible, please pass this cup from me. But not by my will, but by your will. Jesus had to practice his faith. And the same Jesus is inviting you and I to follow him. He's inviting you and I to repent our sins and dedicate our lives to him so that he can fight for you and I. Jesus, that I believe he is more than wonderful. He's just more than miraculous. He's more than marvelous. But he's everything that my soul ever longed for. And this is Jesus was calling you and I to come to his feet.